Welcome back to Building What We've Learned. Today we're going to take a look into the Epic of Shahnameh and specifically focus on the story of the evil Snake King. So let's waste no time and get building. When I first began researching this video, I set out to learn about Persian mythology and study the pre-Islamic culture of the region. In doing so, I learned that there's no such thing as Persian mythology, as it's still an active and living religion known as Zoroastrian. So instead, I pivoted and took a look at their historical literature and their folkloric kings of legend. The most famous collection of these stories is in the Shahnameh, written by the poet Ferdowsi at a pivotal point in Persian history, where Islam was just beginning to overtake Zoroastrianism as the most prominent religion. Ferdowsi was writing from an interesting perspective. Many of these stories were very familiar to the people reading the Shahnameh, but they were no longer part of daily life. So the poet framed these stories as folk tales to the modern reader while still preserving the cultural significance of the stories. One of the core concepts of Zoroastrian is the constant battle between good and evil, and how the humans would participate in this battle on a daily basis. It is the responsibility and duty of each person to choose good or else provide a foothold for evil to gain an upper hand and create havoc. The story of the Serpent King begins with a different king, Yamshin, and how his choices allowed evil into the world. This king proclaims that he is such an amazing king that must mean he is a god, and forces the people of his kingdom to worship him and carry him around in a golden throne. He believes he was above all others, and over time his attitude caused his kingdom to abandon him. Yamshin's actions tip the scales of the world towards evil, which allow Ahriman, the source of evil, to become more powerful and start influencing the world. Ahriman travels across the desert to another kingdom and disguises himself as a human. He approaches the young prince Zahhak and asks the child to enter a covenant with him. If the prince agrees, Ahriman said he would raise the prince's head above the sun. Zahhak was young and easily swayed by Ahriman's words. Zahhak agrees, and Ahriman sets about filling the boy's head with evil words, soon suggesting the prince should kill his father. Zahhak hesitates, but does eventually follow through on setting up a trap for his father in the garden where the king performs his prayers. When the king dies, there's no suspicion placed on his son, so Zahhak takes his place as king. During the first few years of Zahhak's reign, Amir teaches the new king some magic and repeatedly attempts to sway him towards evil. Zahhak, while not as good as king as his father, does his best to care for his people and frequently chooses good over evil. Ahriman realizes this, and so he changes his strategy to approach Zahhak as a young man requesting to be a cook for his palace. Once in this new position, Ahriman changes the vegetarian diet to contain large amounts of meat. This impresses the king so much that he has Ahriman summoned before him to grant him a wish. Ahriman asks that he is only allowed to kiss the king twice, once on each shoulder. As soon as Ahriman kisses him, his human disguise is consumed by the earth, and two venomous snakes appear on the king's shoulder. Zahhak immediately attempts to have these snakes removed, but no matter how many times they're cut from his shoulders, the snakes return. While the king searches for answers, Ahriman appears again, this time disguised as a scholar of medicine. He tells the king that the only way to tame and subdue the venomous snakes is to feed them 2 human brains each day. The king, desperate to have a solution for the snakes, agrees and begins the process of having random citizens chosen each day to be sacrificed and made into soup. News of this evil king spreads across the deserts to the kingdom of Yamshid, the king who declared himself a god. The people of this kingdom see the Snake King as an opportunity to depose their own evil ruler. They declare Zahhak the new king of their land and gather an army in Zahhak's kingdom. With Ahriman's influence, Zahhak sends his own army with them and overthrows Yamshid. Zahhak becomes the ruler of Persia and continues to push the world towards evil, until one day the creator god and source of good, Ahura Mazda, decides to intervene. He finds a descendant of Yamshid and ensures the birth of a son named Ferindun. The night of his birth, Zahhak has a vision of a young man killing him with a mace shaped like a cow head. Zahhak wakes up with screams so violent they shake the palace walls. His advisors are reluctant to interpret the dream, but soon inform the king it was a prophecy of the boy Ferindun who will one day overthrow him. Zahhak immediately begins searching for the boy. Ferindun's mother quickly hears about the hunt for her child and hides him away in the forest to be raised by a magic cow. A few years later, the forest is no longer safe, and Faradun's mother is forced to collect her child and flee to the mountains. Zahhak arrives in the forest not long after. He is furious to learn that the boy is no longer there, and burns the forest to the ground, and kills everything inside it. Zahhak begins to live in fear of this child. During this time, he worries that he is a bad king. He creates an official statement and demands his citizens say that he is good and skilled at ruling his kingdom. He hopes that if the boy sees this, he would choose not to overthrow a good king. One day, a blacksmith marches into the palace and demands an audience with Zahhak. The blacksmith had 17 sons, but over the years, all but one of them had been sacrificed to the Snake King. His last son had just been chosen to be sacrificed as well, and the father demands the king spares his son. Zahhak agrees and proceeds to ask the blacksmith to sign the formal statement declaring Zahhak a good king for his mercy. The blacksmith is furious at this action. He tears the papers and marches out into the city. He uses his blacksmithing apron as a rallying flag and gathers an army of people to find the prophesied child. Faradun had grown up knowing of his prophecy, and when the army arrives at his doorstep, Faradun wastes no time in putting on armor fit for his royal bloodline, and has the army forge him a mace shaped like a cow head to honor the magical cow who raised him and was killed by the evil king. As the rebel army prepares to march into the city, Zahhak had been busy gathering his own army and had sent out to find them. The two miss each other, and Faradun arrives to a city that is largely empty. He takes the palace with little resistance, and the army declares Faradun the new king of Persia. When Zahhak returns, he becomes enraged, and the two begin to battle. Faradun's side quickly overpowers the Snake Kings, and in the final moment, Faradun hits Zahhak with a mace. Faradun is about to kill him, but is stopped by a servant of the creator god. They ask him not to kill the Snake King, but rather imprison him under a mountain for the rest of time. Faradun agrees, and his first act as king of Persia is to imprison the evil Snake King under a mountain until the end of days. Thank you guys so much for watching. I love how this build turned out. Any excuse to use glazed terracotta and I will take it. I think it's a beautiful block and I want more people to use it. I was familiar with the story before beginning my research, but reading it over in its entirety truly put a new perspective on it. And if you guys have the opportunity to read the Shahnameh, I highly recommend it. And I'll see you guys next time. Bye!